So if you were to think about, if you were like, hey, you're meeting somebody that's just like you were 10 years ago, what is the thing that you'd say to them to be like, hey, if you do these things, repeat business is likely? What are some of the major things?
I'm going to repeat myself here, but a great product. It's the same thing. If you go to a restaurant and your first experience wasn't great, how often are you going to go back there? Probably not great. If you go there and your mind is blown by how great the experience was, how great the food was, you're like already thinking about when you're going to go back. But too many brands, especially in the e-commerce world, miss that. They're like, I made a decent tumbler, like this Yeti tumbler. It's kind of the same, but we improved on this thing and this. But the product is really not that great. And people are going to go back to the brand that they love and the brand that's actually doing it really well.
I want to welcome Jeff Sheldon back to the Entrepreneur Studio.
Yeah, thanks for having me back. Round two.
Making the trip a second time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good. You've been good since the last time we sat down?
Yeah, things have been good. I mean, last time I was limping in, barely making it with an Achilles tear. This time I'm running in. So.
Yeah, there you go.
Feeling a lot better.
Well, the cool part is we got to follow your launch shortly thereafter, one of the coolest products, and we'll talk about that. And in our last conversation, we talked about the inception of Ugmonk, the minimalist philosophy behind your business, as well as, how you went from this side hustle of making shirts to running a multi-million-dollar lifestyle brand. And I want to drill down, today a little bit more on like your process of design and development and distribution, because, you're designing everything from like wall clocks and pin trays to coffee mugs and desk organizers, and you've built this meaningful community of, I'm going to say Ugmonk advocates. So tell me about your relationship between your product decisions and your community.
Yeah, I think it's been a really organic journey. So we talked more about my origin story, so people can go back and listen to that in the first episode.
Yeah.
How I started, got into shirts, got into designing t-shirts. It wasn't because I love shirts, it was because I love design. And that has slowly evolved from shirts to prints to office accessories to desk organization to really like systems and ideas of how to work better, how to clarify the way that you work with analog, how to clarify your desk and make it more productive. But the thread has actually stayed pretty consistent. It's always been about designing those things that have this Venn diagram of function and aesthetic. And we're like that little crossover in the Venn diagram. Like, how do I make something that's beautiful and useful and they're equally as good? So if it's a t-shirt or it's a desk organizer, it's always been the same thing, but it's just evolved from the outside. Like the product line has changed dramatically, but that goal has always stayed the same.
Yeah, because I think it's really interesting. The question that I kind of maybe came away with is I'm like, I wonder how Jeff finds customers, how he, there's this, it's almost like, this, you have this community of people who are like, they buy your stuff, you know what I mean? And so it's almost like you're curating these collections, right? And you have this person in mind. And I'm like, who do you think of? Is it like sort of like people that are buying from you or like super similar to you? Are you designing for yourself and designing things that you like? Or how do you just have it dialed in, you know what I mean? So well on what your customers want and how they buy.
It's the selfish answer is I'm designing for myself. Like if I don't like it, I won't sell it. And so some of the things that you mentioned, the wall clocks, the pens, those are objects that I bring in. So we're curating those and we're selling them. I'm not actually designing those from scratch. But the filter is like, would I actually buy it? Do I actually personally like it? Which keeps like this very tight curated feel because it has a very consistent thing throughout. And then the people that like it come and kind of appreciate that curation, that like the aesthetic, they like what I like. But it's less about focus groups and less about like, just ask your audience what they want and just make those top 3 things. I think it's a balance because you can get too caught up in just asking anybody what they want. What should my next product be? Design that, design this. And the brand will have no consistency or cohesive feel because you're basically just trying to latch on to whatever people are telling you. I think you should make a bigger version of that. Okay, I'll make it like, and I'm kind of doing the opposite. I'm like, do I want this to exist? Like, is this something that I personally want and feel good about selling? Or is it something that it's just because people are saying you should make a bigger version or a different color, you should do it, the desk organizer in different colors. Like so I kind of put the filter through, I filter everything through my taste and what I want.
Yeah. Okay. So does your wife use the analog products?
That's a good question. She actually does. So for a while she didn't, and she is home with our kids right now.
Yeah.
It has much less of a desk job to put that analog card up in front of her. But she's been using it, and I think she's actually found it really helpful. And I think people are using it in such different ways, because I use it in a certain way where every single day I start with a card and I write down the things the top priorities of things I need to work on. That card just sits in the card holder and stares at me all day and says, Jeff, do this, Jeff, do this. And if I don't have that card, my day is all over the place. But other people, they're not at a desk. Like, she's running around, dropping the kids off at school, doing errands, but she might make like a list and work through that over the course of a week. But it still gives like that satisfying, like, okay, when I'm home, you see the card, you pull it out of your pocket, you have like some tangible version of your priorities.
Yeah.
And that's just totally different than having them on your phone.
So true. So true. And I wonder, it's like the reason I asked about your wife, because I knew you got kids at the house, and you guys are all sharing these responsibilities, and there's certain work you do and certain work she does, and I'm like, I wonder if there's a crossover there. I wonder though, where do you get customer feedback though? You know what I mean? The people who give you suggestions, what medium are you using? You know what I mean? To get those suggestions, that feedback.
I think we live in a time where you can get that almost anywhere and everywhere, sometimes for better or for worse. So like, I post something on Instagram, I'm going to have people commenting on it, post something on Twitter, sending out an email. So like, I shouldn't say that I'm only designing in a vacuum for myself. Like, it's not just, I'm going away, I'm designing these things, I like them if anyone else likes them. I think there is a balance between getting that feedback and being able to post things, being able to post progress shots of products I'm working on, and then ask customers. Like, I can send an email, in one click and send it to 50,000 people, and they're going to write back and say, hey, I didn't like this, or I like this, I think you should make this. And I can kind of take all of that feedback, filter it down, and decide, yeah, there's a lot of people that actually want this. And I do take that feedback, and we've made some changes on things because of like some great suggestions from the customers where they're actually helping me design the product. They're not saying, hey, I want this, but can you change this and this and this for me? It's more of like, they're actually helping me build the product, because that feedback loop is it's every single day. Like, people can comment on anything at any given time these days, right?
I love that about the way that you do your Instagram and bring people along, because it's almost like this mix between these sneak peeks that you do and letting people kind of really be bought into the things that you have. It's almost like this continuous engagement where people will go to your website and they'll see what you already have, but then they get these sneak peeks of things that are coming, and it's almost like you've created the way that you go about product development and sort of curating customers, right, if you will, or this community. The way you're going about it, they're helping each other, which is really, really interesting. So what was that an intentional thing, or is it just like, did it just kind of happen, to be like, I'm just going to do Instagram, and you know what I mean?
Yeah, it was super organic. I mean, I was on Instagram in the early days when you could only post 1x1 photos, and you had like 3 different filters to choose from. And it was an organic thing to just start sharing, because my life and my business are so intertwined. Here's things I'm working on, just felt natural. So building in public, and a lot of the things that people talk about now, like, don't ever build in public, you'll give away all your secrets, or you should always build in public because then people can give you that feedback. It wasn't like an intentional choice. It just really evolved from, here's a picture of something I'm designing. What do you guys think? Oh, this is really cool. If someone's like, oh, I'd love that on my desk. And then I can take that. But I've never had a strategy behind social media, for better or for worse. I couldn't even tell you what my following is or engagement metrics or anything. And I think part of that is not because I'm above that. It's just, that's so distracting from what I'm actually doing. I'm just trying to use the tools that I have to get the product, get the sneak peeks, get the things out there to people that like it. But yeah, social media has been a kind of a cool way for me to drip those things out, so people have seen the process before I launch the actual finished product.
Which is awesome. What do you think with the way that you've communicated with customers? Because you have a email list that you have that comes largely from the website, probably. Mm-hmm. Then you've got the following on Instagram. What is the thing that has surprised you the most about this sort of way of digitally connecting with customers?
The real end all is that everyone's human and we're just using these platforms to connect. So it shouldn't be any less of a human connection because I'm DMing someone on Instagram than it is sitting here talking with you. But for whatever reason, people treat it differently. But if you back up and you think like, hey, if I'm sending an email to 50,000 people right now, every single person that opens that email, minus maybe a few bots or spam addresses, is an actual human that's opening that. That's taking like a second out of their day to take interest in what I do. So instead of like trying to scale and trying to think bigger about all that stuff, it's always like, okay, there's a human at the other end that clicked the like button on this Instagram post. Like they're as valuable as anyone else, but sometimes we devalue that because we're just looking at open rates and metrics and all those things. So I don't know. It's one reason I haven't outsourced my Instagram like and done that because it's so personal to me where I've like met up with people. You know, I'm out here in Oklahoma City. If I post on there, I guarantee someone will be like, yo, let's grab coffee. And like those human connections are happening because of being on social media, putting things out there. Same with emails. Like I have full on conversations with people. If they write back to the email when I send out a newsletter, it's me writing back to them. Is it scalable? No, but it's actually a really cool way to build those relationships.
Yeah, that's amazing. How personal you take a lot of that, how much intentionality you have is really powerful. One of the things that we talk about, you know, in marketing, right, is I like to say that job one is customer understanding. You have to understand your customers, and in order to persuade them, you know what I mean, or to get them interested. And so what do you, if you were to describe, cause you've got a lot of repeat business, people want this collection. It's almost like, where's this collection going? Like, what else can I go get to, make it more, to make this more of my own kind of thing. How would you say, like, if you were to describe your ideal customer, who is it? Where do they work? What do they do? What do they look like? You know what I mean? How do you think about, if you were to sit and imagine your ideal customer?
It's tough because I think it's such a broad, there is no ideal customer, I guess is my answer. But I think the ideal customer is the people that are buying into Ugmonk and what we create because they get it. And by that, I mean, they understand why things cost the way they do, how we're making them in the US, like solid wood versus plywood versus veneer. Like they're buying in because they want the quality. They understand it's an investment piece. We're not going to ever appeal to people shopping on Amazon that are just like looking and sorting by price. In fact, we're not even on Amazon for that reason because we can't compete. But the people that are buying it are kind of have that same, the ideal customer has that same intentionality. They're looking for something that's beautiful and useful, something they're going to have for a while. And it's less about kind of cost comparison and shopping. I think a lot of what I'm doing recently with Analog and with Gather is more of a mindset too. So how can I make myself better? How can I clarify all this stuff that's jumbling around in my head or this never-ending to-do list on my phone? They're the people that resonate with that idea. And that's not everyone, right? Like, so stay-at-home moms might not be the best use case for Analog, although I think it applies. But there's a lot of us that have so many things and notifications and all these things coming into our digital world that we're like, how do I get this stuff done? So that person that gets it is not saying, I should just write this down on like a $1 memo pad. They're like, I need a system for this. I want to invest in something, which is like actually making their life better in a way. Same thing with Gather. So the ideal customer understands that. It does take some education and some more thought than just, I saw a shiny object over here and I just spent a lot of money on it.
Well, I think the last time we had the conversation, you were in sort of, I would say, R&D on, I think it was Gather. Talk to us about, what sort of led up to the launch, right? How did you decide on the product? And then just how did you get it made? How do you get it made at scale? You know what I mean? Walk everybody through that. Cause that was a big moment shortly after, your interview aired.
It's been a journey. It's been a roller coaster. We were just talking about it before the show a little bit. I think launching a product can be done in probably 1,000 different ways, or building a product. So the way that we're doing it is not the way that I'm telling everybody to do it, but I can tell you how kind of the path that we walked down. The backstory is we manufactured overseas for the first iteration of Gather, which was 2017, so it was a while ago. The product was very successful, but the manufacturing was anything but successful. And I was completely disconnected from the process. So I didn't know really what was happening. I was just kind of waiting, trying to get samples, working with a group that was kind of monitoring everything. Long story short, we ended up having 2 shipping containers, almost a whole shipping container of bad product that we had to sort through. And I'm not sure I've actually shared this full story anywhere. So you're getting some inside baseball.
I want to know.
But I felt really demoralized after I put my heart and soul into this product, and the launch was going so well. It seemed like the next iteration of Ugmonk as a brand. And there were so many things behind the scenes. It was just like, this is not working. The wood finishing was not done well, not to the spec that I wanted. So we physically unboxed every single one of them and checked every single one and replaced them and sent emails to customers. But all that to say, we were like, okay, I don't want to go through that again. We also outsourced the shipping. So we outsourced it to a 3PL to do all the shipping, because we're like, I'm in my, at that time, my warehouse was my parents' basement. So it was like, there's no way we're getting 2 shipping containers delivered to their house. And so I outsourced that. Everything under the sun that could go wrong went wrong. Wrong shipments, wrong charges, mislabeled thing. And it was like, so I was at a really, really low point trying to go through, what am I supposed to do here? Because this product seemed like it was going to go well. I actually got a call from the producer at Shark Tank that was like, hey, we'd love to have you like bypass the first 3 rounds to have you on the show. And I'm like, I was just shaking thinking about it, because like we didn't have the product at that point. And there seemed like there was a lot of things ahead that could go well, but in the behind the scenes, it was just going really, really poorly. We eventually dug out of that, and it was a lot of work. And I think just trying to make right on our customers, making sure we stand behind what we do. But the moral of the story was like, I don't want to do that type of manufacturing. So if I'm going to make a product, it has to be somewhat local, that I can go meet with the manufacturer. I can be involved in the process. I can see it happen. We can refine things. And that was all of the learnings that I put into this next iteration of Gather. And that's what this past year has been. And the version of Gather, if you go onto our site now, is all built within like a 60-mile radius of where we are in Pennsylvania. And we're doing it with like Amish craftsmen and generational woodworkers that have been doing this stuff for multi-generations of craft. And we brought it back, and we've made it like that much nicer of a product. So that's the long and the short of it. But it was kind of apply all of those things that I don't want to do to the new version.
Yeah.
And the new version, although there's still been bumps in the road, it's been a whole much better process. And we've really proud to have the product on the site now.
Okay. So that begs the question, how many packages do you still have left from those 2 shipping containers?
Thankfully, we got rid of almost all of them. And we've done that. So what we actually did was we went to our local woodworkers, had them make a whole new run of those parts, used the other parts, which were injection molded, and combined those, sold them on the site, eventually chipped through. And then we sold anything that was lesser at like a warehouse, like scratch and dent sale that we did. So we actually got rid of almost all of it, which we never thought we would do, because we had pallets and pallets and pallets. Also, one thing I didn't hit on was that we brought the shipping back in-house. So now we have a physical location warehouse in Downingtown, Pennsylvania, which is game-changing, because things literally come in our door, we inspect them, we assemble, we box them, and we ship them out. We deal with all of those customer issues between any part of that journey. And although, again, it's not the most scalable way of doing it, it's the only way that I can sleep at night, because I know we have an airtight machine where we can control the entire process from end to end.
Yeah. Well, I think literally the afternoon after you and I had that conversation, I went onto your site and bought a bunch of stuff. It's a great experience. All the boxing and everything was super cool. Still have all the shirts, the Simplify shirt, the Smell the Roses. Yeah. So all of those kinds of things.
And if you emailed in, it was literally, our one customer service rep that's going to talk to you. And if you needed a different size, it's like people are blown away with the customer service, because we can be like, hey, I'm going over to the shelf right now to check it. And they get back to you. And people are like, this is the best customer service I've ever received.
Oh, that's amazing.
So yeah, it's more expensive to do it that way. It's harder. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of manual labor, moving the products around and shipping and dealing with returns. But I think it's a way to do it differently than a lot of the DTC direct-to-consumer brands have kind of been like, just outsource everything, outsource customer service, outsource shipping, outsource product, send it all to Amazon, and then just kind of, just watch the numbers climb.
Yeah, just watch them.
And I'm kind of doing the polar opposite of that. Like we're more like an old mom and pop, like craftsman style business that's doing really, really high end product, but still using the internet to get it out there, right? So we don't have to worry about foot traffic, but we can have 50,000 people walk through our virtual door at any given time.
Yeah, which is amazing. It's like the way that you manage the site, the way it's almost like everything really, really feels connected, right? And in this idea of you tried the at scale sort of go get a manufacturer to do stuff, you're like, number one, it wasn't quality, which is a part of your brand. And then two is it's not personal, right?
Right.
It's part of your brand. And
it reflects on me.
Yeah.
So I was like, at that point when we were doing overseas and we had launched that Kickstarter, it's like, I knew I had to make right on that, even at a loss, because it's me. It's like, I'm so closely tied to the brand, for better or for worse, that like my Instagram is me.
Yeah.
The brand is still me to an extent. I have a team of people now behind me, but so yeah, I don't know. I think there's a disconnect when people start businesses and they want to stay anonymous for that reason. Like in case anything goes wrong, it's like, but then you have nothing on the line. There's no skin in the game. Mm-hmm. So I'm doing the opposite. I don't know. I don't know if it's a good move. I don't know if this is advice or if this is just what I did, but this is kind of where I'm at.
Yeah. Well, how do you kind of balance? Because if you think about it, you've probably read Rick Rubin's, recent book. It's like almost, it's like, you don't make it anything great. You don't make it for somebody else. You make it for yourself. And then hopefully, it's an offering. And if people love it, great. And it seems like you have a similar, philosophy in that way. And that seems like a luxury because you still have a business and you're trying to make a living, right?
Yeah.
So how do you hold the tension between sort of your brand and your core values and, making a decent living?
Man, I wish I knew that there was like a magic wand or magic formula to tell people if you follow these 3 steps, it'll happen for you too. I think the authenticity and like the intentionality behind what I'm creating, because it comes from a pure place. Like I'm not, the best designer in the world, and I haven't done things perfectly. And there's not every single product has been, every little detail has been perfect. But the intention is to get there, is to always be pushing for excellence. And I think because I've done that for 15 years, putting one foot in front of the other, in front of the other, in front of the other, it's attracted people 5 here, 5 here, 10 here. And it's built up to a point where now I have this audience of people that appreciates, the type of products that I'm making. And it's much easier to launch things to them because they're sitting on the edge of their seat. Hey, when's that other thing? When's that new version of Analog coming out? When's that next version of Gather? What's the next thing coming out? And launching to an audience like that is completely different than trying to knock on doors and say, hey, I've got a thing. Do you want to buy it? They're already coming. They're basically ready with their credit cards out. The meme of the guy that's throwing the cash out the window.
Take my money.
Which is like, it's really rewarding as a designer, but I don't think that comes overnight. I think that came from building this consistent design approach of an intentional approach to how we make products. That's kind of where I would go with that. And I think Seth Godin has a really good mantra, which is people like us do things like this. I think I said that right. Basically, you're going to find your tribe. You're going to find the people that get that. And when you're marketing to them, you don't really have to explain it. You don't have to give them the full list of, features and benefits. They're already in that tribe. So if you're, into Harley Davidson motorcycles, you're in a tribe. If you're into like high-end guitars, you're in a tribe. If you're into high-end, cooking or coffee, you're already primed for that. So the audience that I'm selling to they're already ready for that. They're already part of that community instead of trying to convince somebody, hey, you should write your to-do list on a piece of paper. Like I'm not going around. It's totally different. Right. So I think it's just a different mindset when you're not trying to hit the whole general public with an idea and, watch your ad come on during the Super Bowl to be like, I hope I got everyone in this ad. It's like, I'm at a very, very, very small percentage of people in the world that appreciate and understand what I do. But that percentage is big enough for me to make a living and have a team of people and, grow a brand.
So how do you acquire a new customer? What are some of the things that you do to acquire a new customer? Because you've got, a lot of products now. I'd say you have a variety of very consistent, looking brand, and themes and collections. How do you get a new customer?
Up until 3 years ago, it was completely organic, meaning like
word of mouth.
Word of mouth. Somebody said, "Hey, I got this thing. You should check out Ugmonk. These products are really good, or these shirts are really good." And then we experimented with some paid advertising, didn't really work. And then 3 years ago, we finally kind of cracked that nut, and that was basically because of the product market fit. So the analog product really, I think, struck a pain point with people, or struck a nerve with them, and hit a pain point where they were like, oh, they saw it. It's visually pleasing. And they had the same problem that I did of scrolling their phone and losing their to-do list and not getting things done. And that product started to work, and we were able to put some money behind it. And then we were able to reach a much broader audience than just relying on word of mouth, and kind of like amplify that. I would say the word of mouth is still a huge part of what we do, though.
Yeah,
and it's so many people, there's so many conversations happening that I don't know about, that someone said, oh, I just told my brother-in-law and he just bought 3 things, and I just told him. And it really goes back to making remarkable products. And those products should spread. The stories will spread because the products are remarkable.
Yeah. Because it's, for you, it's kind of like, if you can get somebody to buy, the propensity for them to buy something else is really high.
Yeah. I mean, our repeat customer rate is through the roof. I don't know a percentage offhand, but it's very, very high. In fact, there's people that will buy and buy again within 48 hours sometimes after they get the product, because it's like, oh, I thought this was going to be nice. And then they get it in person, and they're like, this is way nicer than I even expected.
Yeah.
So as as a designer and design first brand, I'm like, if I can make these products just that good that you can't help but like, dude, come check this thing out. This is amazing. And some people will be like, what's so great about that? And it's like, okay, they're not my customer, but that person that is my customer is my evangelist, my advocate. That's like, someone's got to see how great this thing is, or how much it's changed my life, or how much it's helped. And I think that is way more powerful than any Facebook ad or Instagram ad or any post like that, endorsement from a celebrity. It's like, if you actually like what you're buying, you tell people about it. And it's as simple as that.
It's so true. So I think one of the reasons, to have you back is, I think the magic in a bottle that you have is you have developed this brand for quality, and it's personal. And it's sort of, you're intentionally staying at a certain size, right? And you have developed a way and a methodology for getting repeat business. And that is one, I'm going to say, a mysterious outcome for a lot of retailers, right? So if you were to think about, if you were like, hey, you're meeting somebody that's just like you were 10 years ago, what is the thing that you'd say to them to be like, hey, if you do these things, repeat business is likely? What are some of the major things?
I'm going to repeat myself here, but a great product. It's the same thing. If you go to a restaurant and your first experience wasn't great, how often are you going to go back there? Probably not great. If you go there and your mind is blown by how great the experience was, how great the food was, you're like already thinking about when you're going to go back. But too many brands, especially in the e-commerce world, miss that. They're like, I made a decent tumbler, like this Yeti tumbler. It's kind of the same, but we improved on this thing and this, but the product is really not that great. And people are going to go back to the brand that they love and the brand that's actually doing it really well. I think it's really, really hard to get repeat business if you're not putting out an absolutely awesome product, because there's so much stuff out there. Amazon's the same way. Like, how often do you repeat buy something from an Amazon seller? Because you're buying something, it's probably going to fall apart. It's not, you're usually not buying for aesthetics. You're just buying for utility. Like, hey, we need this thing. We need a filter for our vacuum cleaner.
Or I need it fast.
There's zero brand affinity. So the next time you go on to buy that filter for the vacuum cleaner, you could buy from anyone. It doesn't matter. There's no connection there. Whereas there's brands that people have affinities for, the Nikes, the Apples, the Patagonias. Like, people actually feel something connected to that because their products are so good. If their products weren't good, the branding would be nothing. And I think that's where I'm just like, product. It's so important to spend so much time perfecting that product instead of shipping it and being like, it seems like it's as good as anyone else's. We have really good marketing. It's like, you've got to double down on the actual product to make it something that people want.
Yeah. And I'm thinking a way that you, if you get somebody to buy over and over again, do you have kind of like this, like a way that if I were in your shoes, I would probably say something like, okay, I have this digital fingerprint of people that have bought over and over and over again. package that up and say, hey, Google and hey, Meta, go find me people that look like that, right? Is that one of the things that you've been doing with kind of paid advertising is, matched list and then lookalikes?
Yeah, exactly. I think it's the only thing that's different about it is when you say, hey, Meta, find somebody like this, it's doing the best that it can with algorithms and all the tracking and stuff. But it's not the same as finding our actual, like your friend that you're like, I know Jim down the street, you would love this. Dude, come check out my home office. I just redid the whole thing. And the people that it brings in don't convert as well because it's trying to do the best it can. And we find people, but those people also have no connection to the brand. This is their first touch point. They have no history with Ugmonk products. Why is this thing so expensive? So the challenge is like marketing to people outside of our community is much, much different. Like it's a different mindset. Where if I launched a product to you, knowing now you know the backstory of Ugmonk and you have some, you physically know. When I launch that next thing, you're much more primed to buy. You're closer to making another purchase than putting that new product on Meta and just saying, hey, find people that might want this thing. So it's been challenging, I think, in that regard to think about those two different paths.
For sure. Yeah. And it's one of those things as well. Like you've got this website. Do you run kind of A/B testing or do you literally have your process and you just kind of you just keep running the process?
We just run the process. I mean, so we're a small team. There's 4 of us.
Yeah.
And I'm still doing all the design and marketing. I work with someone that does some of the ad buying, but it's so much of what I do is gut feel. And there's literally no A/B testing. We're not testing subject lines. We're not testing anything. And somebody's going to hear this and be like, dude, I can make it so much better for you. We could do all these A/B tests. We could optimize. We could change the color of your buttons and figure out if people buy more. And while there's some truth to that, I think with the opportunity cost of me spending all of my time perfecting what color buy button is on a product page versus working on the new product, I always go back to like, no, I've got these ideas. I have these products. I have these methodologies that I want to turn into physical products. So we don't do any we do very, very little. I mean, we're such a small company that we don't have anyone to even like focus on that stuff. Not to say to ignore it completely, but again, if you don't have a good product, if you don't have something that people want, optimizing and A/B testing a subject line is not going to help you either.
Which is so true. Well, if there's one, let's say one role, that if you could have it in the company, so resources, finances, whatever aside, what is one role in the company that you would be like, I need a person who's like me that could do this? What is the thing you would sort of place your bet on?
Helping to draw the stories and ideas and communicate those stories, pull those things out of me, as you can say. I can't even get it out right now. Helping to get those stories out of me and my mind into more people's hands. And by that, I mean, like, people are like, you should start a podcast. You should start a YouTube channel. I want to see behind the scenes process of like how you design, how you think, how you work, how you actually use the products you make. So I think having a person that specializes in that could take that content and kind of give it to more people would reinforce the whole idea of what Ugmonk is and what the products are. Because I don't do a great job at that. It's like, I've made this thing, I released the thing, I show it. I'm really good at the launch stage, but the supporting along the way, I'm not great at. So I think about like, man, if I had somebody that could interview people, how they're using analog, all different industries, and we could create content around that, we could educate people of how to actually implement the system in their work. That's kind of the missing piece right now.
So I would call that product marketing.
Yes.
Right. Because I mean, that is absolutely something because that's the storyteller. They're the one sort of unpacking the why behind the product, helping to connect, customers to it, getting case studies and testimonials, the behind the scenes, all that kind of stuff. So that's powerful, because I think at the end of the day, there's a missing component in a lot of great product companies, that they have this gap of being able to kind of like articulate the story and socialize the story, because I mean, I do think that's probably one of the most compelling things about your brand is the story. It's your origin story, which we've talked about, which is really powerful. I think the way that you've kind of put this whole community and got the power of this community behind you. I mean, when I think about, I follow you on Instagram. When I think about, I'm like, I wonder, what Jeff's going to post and what behind the scene things I'm going to get. Like, it's like, I almost see you like sawdust everywhere, with the pencil in your ear, doing the stuff, talking with, the manufacturers and the Amish people that are doing all of these cool craftsman style things for you. I think that's one of the biggest gaps for a lot of companies. What do you think would be maybe the biggest impact that a role like that would make, like in just sort of a business outcome? What do you think would be the biggest impact from a product marketer for you?
I think it would accelerate the ability to get those ideas out there and more people to understand them. And by that, I mean, I think a lot of people have to warm up to the idea of what Ugmonk is. Why is the price point what it is? Why would I need this thing in my life? It doesn't always click with people, but it's a longer path to be like, I'm a stay-at-home mom. I don't need this product. But it's like, imagine if we could have a testimonial of a stay-at-home mom, how she's using analog to help bring some calm to the chaos at the house. I think that would accelerate the idea that more people would be able to understand, do I fit with this brand, or is this just some aesthetic brand for designers?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want it to be seen as that, because I do think there's power in especially the products that I've been releasing the last couple of years that can help people in all walks of life. It's never going to be the most affordable and cheapest version. Like, always go get a pack of sticky notes cheaper than you can our product. But the people that are looking to level up in their life, they want something they're going to actually use, that's going to help them. I think we could help tell those stories and bring more people into the community, more than a Facebook ad is going to just catch your eye. You buy something, it sits on your shelf, you're not sure what to do with it. There's like a disconnect between buying and actually using a product.
Well, what is maybe, because you have this idea of small, like sort of high impact, high quality, personal touch. What is maybe your biggest fear with scale?
Scaling, the way that we're doing things is going to be really hard. Like our supply chain is so localized and can only handle so much volume. Our shipping team, which is just a couple people, can only handle so much volume. And we could hire more, we could get a bigger warehouse, we could do those things. But it's not just as the pie gets bigger, each like slice of that pie gets bigger with it. So even if we have 1% of customer tickets or customer issues right now, that 1% starts to grow and it starts to become a bigger thing to manage. And if our supply chain with one of our woodworkers or our metal fabricators goes down, now we don't just have 10 orders on back order, we have 1,000 orders on back order. We have 1,000 angry customers. Mm-hmm. And I think there are trade-offs at scale that are not always worth it. Money-wise, revenue-wise, if you're looking to build to sell, you want to scale that business. But just to scale just because, it's not all up and to the right. It can actually be a higher cost of doing business. But I don't want to not scale. So I'm not like, I don't want to stay plateaued where we are, but I still see us as the tortoise, not the hare, in that race where we're just slowly, methodically growing over the next 5, 10, 15 years, doing more of what we're doing in the same way that we're doing and not outsourcing everything or shipping it overseas.
Do you spend more time sort of like looking at, like when you're doing reporting just to see how your business is doing, what is sort of a common end of period or end of month or cadence that you use to kind of evaluate, how well your business is doing financially?
Some of it is obviously revenue and number of orders, seeing the average order value and seeing, are people buying more as the products have gotten more expensive or bigger collections of products. Some of it is the new versus repeat buying. Like we want to know how many new customers do we have versus repeat. And a friend was just asking me, where should that percentage be? Like, do you want it to be 75 new and 25 existing? And I didn't have a good answer. I'm like, we're at like 50-50 right now or somewhere around there. It's like, I think that's healthy because that means we have a lot of new people coming in and we're not relying just on past customers. But it also means that past customers are still coming back to buy a second and third and fourth time. But to be honest, I'll go back to, we don't spend a lot of time in the metrics and we look at those things and we keep on moving. And if there were problems there or things that were trending down, I think we'd want to address them. but we're much less of a like data-driven tactical approach. And that goes back to my personality because I'm just not wired that way.
Yeah.
Which maybe it won't be the best thing as as the business grows, it does become more and more important to know all of those things. But it can be a distraction. Like you could spend all your time trying to decipher why do people buy more in October than they did September, and trying to like spend hours and weeks like analyzing that. But we just look at some high level metrics and then keep on moving.
Yeah. Okay. Well, talk to us about a time that you had a lull in your business, and what did you sort of do to attack that problem?
Well, COVID is probably the outlier here. I'll give you one fun story from that because there's not a lot of fun stories that came from COVID, but I have some a positive that came from it. So March 2020, when everything was the outbreak was starting to happen, we thought we might have to be locked in our houses for 10 days. And we're like, what are we going to do for 10 days? And it ends up being, a year or whatever it was. Business had come to almost a screeching halt where there wasn't a lot of people going to buy, luxury items or extra t-shirts. We were all like, I don't know if I'll have money for groceries this month. And I was like, I don't know. I had one part-time employee or two part-time employees. And I was kind of like, I don't know what we're going to do. But what I did was I sent a simple email to our list and was just like, hey, we're still here. We actually have a lot of work from home products. We're a family run business. We want to make it through this. And at that time, we thought it might just be a few weeks. And that single email generated, I think like $20,000 in like sales in the next 24 hours or something like that.
It's amazing.
Which just showed like the building that community for so long, people had our back. And I was getting these emails being like, hey, we're going to make it through this. I got your back. I just bought bought a bunch of product. And tapping into those relationships and that loyal community that's had my back for so long felt amazing because I couldn't just quickly run some Facebook ads and hope that we got generated revenue. And what happened there was like working from home was a thing, but it wasn't as big of a thing as it is for now. It is now. And people started buying, we had leather mouse pads. I had the original Gather desk organizer, and people were trying to get set up on their kitchen table and try to make semblance of like, how do I work from home? And then after that, when face masks became a thing and all of us were like, what's going on? I'm not wearing these things. I didn't want to get involved with any of that. Our t-shirt manufacturer in Los Angeles he sent me an email and he's like, hey, I'm allowed to reopen if I can make face masks. Do you want to sell these to your customers? And I'm like, I don't know. This was super, super early. So just remember how weird it was in the very early days. And he sent me a sample and I was like, it was actually really, really nice. It was like the softest material I've ever felt. And I posted on Instagram, just put one simple post of like me wearing the mask. It's like, would anybody be interested in these? We want to keep our t-shirt manufacturer going through the pandemic. Like I want to support him. And it just took off. And it took off to the point that we had our biggest month ever going into selling face masks.
Wow.
Because people were buying them and the same thing happened. They bought them like, wow, this thing is way softer than all the ones that I have here, the disposable ones. They told their friends, or the people would come up to them in the store and say, where did you get that? I need one. I need a cloth face mask like that. And it ended up being this thing that brought in tens of thousands of customers who didn't even know what Ugmonk was. Like they didn't even know that we made shirts. They came in, they bought masks. And that kind of had this ripple effect to get us through the pandemic and opened up a lot of new avenues that I never thought I'd get into.
Oh my gosh.
Thankfully, we're past that and we're completely done with that. But it turned into just like pivoting in those little moments where it's like, send an email to my customers. Hey guys, we're still here. We have products. We'd love to stay in business. And boom, people came. Hey, here's a product that I think might help us in the next few weeks, months, years. Sent that or launched that, and it turned into this whole thing. So the moral of the story is like, one, build that audience that you have a connection with that you can sell things to. And two is just like keep pivoting. Like the winding path of entrepreneurship is not a straight line from A to B. The last 15 years have been one of those squiggly drawings that crosses over itself and kind of just gets there.
Well, that's a powerful story. Two, just for you to, have two parts of that story. One is where your loyal customers took care of you with that sort of surge of sales. And then all of a sudden you're like, hey, I actually want to sort of pay it forward and let's keep the t-shirt manufacturer going as well. There's this sort of, that maybe like I said, the pay it forward thing is important. What are some of the routines that you do and have done to develop this such a bought in community? And what I mean is obviously the product, the personal sort of things that you do, but what are some of the routines and the practices that you do on social media and in email that are just the consistent everyday things that you do and have done?
From the email side, I still write all of the emails. So they're still from me. I guess I write, the majority of them are directly from me to the customers. And there's a personal approach there that it kind of felt like it made sense when we were a small company, hey, here's a guy designing shirts. And I just never stopped doing that. So I kept doing that. So like when I write an email, it's literally going from my inbox to your inbox. So if you reply back, that's where a lot of those conversations have started and have happened, and the connections and crazy connections of just people, because they'll write in saying, hey, your products have really been helping me. And it's helped my son he has autism, and this analog product has been a thing, like powerful stories that have happened. But people feel like the need or the idea that they can write back to me. Whereas how often do you reply to a branded email, right? Like it comes from a big brand. You don't write back to Nike when they send you, because you're not sending it to a person. So the approach has always been to keep that super personal. And I've even dripped in more kind of personal updates when it comes to the 5 things I'm digging. Every month I send out this email called 5 things I'm digging. It has nothing to do with Ugmonk, but it's just kind of a quick update. Here's what we're working on, and here's 5 things that I'm into right now. It could be music, food, design, fonts, anything. And that keeps it human. Like it keeps people coming back, because they still they'll picture me on the other side of that email, which is a little bit weird, because I'll meet people and they're like, I feel like I kind of know you from reading these 5 things I'm digging emails for so long. Like I could kind of figure out and I'm like, I don't know you at all. I don't know that you've even read my emails. But that personal approach has been something I started with and continue to do with social media, email, all of those things that I think is important in a day and age where we live with, where everything feels completely impersonal. It's hard to talk to even a customer service rep, let alone the founder of a company.
Yeah. That's pretty awesome. The 5 things you're digging. That's definitely a program that you're running. And do you have a certain cadence? Is that every single month?
Yeah, just once a month. And that came out of, it didn't come out of a strategy session. It came out of, I had nothing going on to talk about one month, where it's it was in between. It's probably when I was dealing with the first round of Gather and had all the issues we're dealing with, and just said, hey, hope everyone's doing well. This email isn't about me right now, but here's 5 things I'm digging, and just literally just sent that to the list. And people wrote back, and they're like, it was the highest clicked email, and people were like, this is awesome. Didn't know that this thing was out, or just discovering different branding and different design, different ideas that I come across. Yeah. And I love sharing that stuff. So it was a win-win. I love finding unique things. I love finding that thing, that special thing, that hidden cafe, and then sharing it with people. And then I'll, sometimes I'll even hear back from the cafe or the designer or the photographer. I'll be like, I just got a bunch of inquiries. Did you send something that's coming from your list? And I love just sharing that spotlight. With no affiliation, there's no benefit to me. But all of that ties back to this idea of you're still getting the email from me. It's that personal curation. It's a connection to me as the designer and the founder. And there's not too many people doing that. And I don't know if I'm just beating to my own drum over here, making it up, but it seems to be working for our community. So I'm just going to keep doing it.
I love it. Well, what's kind of your best troll story? Who's giving you the wildest DMs, or because you get a lot of good customer feedback, but you got to tell us a troll story. Because your reviews, all of your reviews are 5 stars everywhere.
Yeah.
There's got to
be. All right. Well, so I'm trying to think on the spot here. We had a customer. This will be really embarrassing if this customer listened to it. I don't know what their name was, but the analog product. So it's essentially it's a wood block that holds a card at an angle. So when the card is sitting on your desk, you can see your card kind of propped up. So picture a place card holder. And they wrote in saying they really like the product. The quality is great, but their neck is just really hurting from using the product. And they're just I wish you could just make the card stand up. They literally had the card holder flipped around backwards and had been bending over like this to try to use. And I was like, so they sent a picture of it, and we're like, if you flip the card holder around this way, where the card fits this way, you'll be able to see your tasks. It's just stuff like that.
You're like,
sometimes
you're
that cracks
doing
me
it
up.
wrong.
Yeah. I mean, we've never shown a picture of it that way. I don't know where they got the idea. But they were complaining about that they had neck pain from our product.
Faces down. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Gotta love that.
I'm trying to think if there's any other crazy stories, but we get some. I would not say this is an interesting troll story, but we do get a lot of knockoffs of our product, which has been really frustrating. People in other countries usually literally lifting our entire product design, marketing, photography, everything. And people, like my fan base, will DM me and be like, hey, do you know have you seen this knockoff? And sometimes they'll be the ones writing the nasty emails to the owner. I'm not telling them to do this, but on my behalf, they're like, hey, take this down. This is Jeff's product. You can't see selling this. And sometimes just by guilting them into it, they'll take it down.
That's amazing.
But yeah, the trolling, that's not really trolling. That's just theft.
It's total theft.
Has been frustrating, but as we have more success, I guess that's part of it.
Well, you're not thinking patents and all that kind of stuff, right?
No, and I went down that path a little bit, and the patent system to me is not designed for small businesses like us.
Yeah.
You have to have the money to litigate and to reinforce everything. Copyright and trademarks we do have.
Yeah.
But utility patents are really hard to get. Design patents are not very defendable. And I think at the end of the day, people want the real thing. So we'll go back to, like, if you're buying a legacy brand product, you're like, I want a John Deere tractor. I want a Patagonia jacket. I want a Rolex. You're looking for the actual thing. And there's always going to be people that want the knockoff Rolex that are like, just because, and they're always searching for the fake Nikes, and they're always going to find that stuff. So there's a market, for better or for worse, for people buying the knockoffs, which is terrible that it exists. But then there's a whole market of people that are like, I want the real, like, what was the real analog system? The Ugmonk one. I'm trying to find that. But yeah, it's a really tricky thing to do when everything's on the internet and everybody can see everything.
Yeah, it's totally true. Well, I had a couple of doozy questions that I was like, I want to hear a couple of them from Jeff. Like, yeah, let's take a sip of water. What is Ugmonk without Jeff Sheldon?
I'm not sure that it can really exist. I think it would be very, very different. Somebody could take kind of our IP and our product line and continue it for a little while. But my fear is that the whole human connection relationship behind the scenes, when that trails off, so does our community. I don't think just the assets of what I've created they may be sellable at some point, but people are buying into Ugmonk for more than just the products. It's the ideas, and it's the relationship, and it's to be part of that tribe, that community. So I'm not sure what it would look like. I think it would be very different, and the curation would probably fall off a cliff. Yeah.
I mean, probably. Could you imagine hiring let's just say a professional CEO that's what they do, is they work on the business, and you were the evangelist and the product, like the R&D guy?
Yeah, I've actually thought about that a lot. If we were to grow even more, I don't want that CEO role.
Yeah.
I want to be the founder. I don't want to be the CEO.
Yeah.
And that distinction, hopefully that self-awareness will help. But what a CEO has to do to drive a company is very different than what a founder and the designer of the company does. And I was just reading a post recently about how that transition, it's a big jump. Like it's the guy inventing something in his garage that came up with this great idea is not necessarily the guy that's going to have 500 people under him and moving this massive machine and global brand. And I'm much more the guy in the garage inventing stuff. That's my happy place, is like, lock me away in a room and let me just have all my design tools and all my inspiration and just making those things and creating and tangibly making with my hands. The business side and the CEO part that I have to do now, kind of out of necessity, has been really challenging. And that's probably the most stressful part of it for me.
Yeah. Well, you're driven by, I'd say, a deep sense of values. You have such a unique approach to business. What would you say is the legacy you hope kind of people take with them for how you run Ugmonk?
I hope that the products that we create are put in that category of legacy brands. It doesn't necessarily mean we're going to be as big as some of the brands that have been around for 200 years. But I do think of people, I think we talked about this last time, Dieter Rams, who designed a lot of the Braun electronics and appliances and that whole system and record players. The legacy that he left a mark as far as on the design world of this combination of form and function, where people collect those items. Like, even if they're not using that record player, they want to have it in their house because that object is beautiful, it's unique, it's useful, it had a certain aesthetic. So even if I'm a 1%, 1% of what Braun ever did or what Dieter ever did, I want to leave the legacy of like those products. If if your grandkids found analog sometime, like found it in the attic and they took it out, they would still be wowed, and there would be some level of awe from the product standpoint that isn't gone in 10, 20, 30 years.
It's amazing. It's amazing. Well, I think it's really inspiring, seeing what you do. I mean, like, think about there's so many entrepreneurs out there that would dream of having sort of the loyal, base of customers and an audience that you have. And it's really been powerful to kind of get to know you and follow you and see the things that you do. And I don't know, it's been amazing to see just that you've got this sort of, I don't know if it's lightning in a bottle, magic, whatever it is, but like the way that you go about things is really inspiring. And I think it's something that if people could repeat a lot of what you do, they'd really enjoy their business.
I will say on that, you get to see the tip of the iceberg. And if you've ever seen the illustration, what's underneath the water is all the parts that people don't see. And I appreciate that. I mean, that means a lot that you see that magic in the bottle. And I hope that that's what people perceive Ugmonk as. But for all the business owners out there that are like, why can't I have that magic? There's a whole lot, there's more things that you don't see than you do see that are literal sweat, and tears and going through the actual process of making things and shipping things and dealing with people and dealing with broken parts and broken relationships and all of the stuff that comes along with it. That I don't post a lot of that on social media. One, because I don't think a lot of people are like, can't wait to see what thing happened to Jeff that was terrible today.
That's what the memoir's for.
Exactly. Yeah. So when I write a book someday, you'll get to hear even more of those horror stories of like the Gather story that we talked about with the shipping containers of product. But I think the part is, I want to keep that magic, that tip of the iceberg that people see, that there is something aspirational to do something similar. And I think really just give people the idea they can do things differently. Like, my story doesn't fit within any template of building a business, entrepreneurship. It's just like putting one foot in front of the other and zigging and zagging. And we figured out a way to do it with, our local manufacturing and our loyal community. I hope to keep doing this for a long time.
It's awesome. You definitely have your way of getting it done, which is powerful. I think one of the things that's been really impressive about the team is we found like a whole different set of rapid fire questions for you than the previous one. So it's like we got round 2 of rapid fire. I was like, we got to ask these to Jeff. See, the hard questions are out of the way. These are the fun questions.
I know, but these are the ones people can hold against me. If I pick the wrong cheesesteak place in Philly, then I'm going to be boycotted.
This is so true. So the pressure's on. I'm just kidding. All right. Well, what is your essential design tool that you can't live without?
Pen and paper.
Wow.
If everything else was gone, I could still create a lot of what I create. It'd be harder, but if I didn't have that, just pen and paper.
Mm-hmm. Soundtrack or silence while ideating new products?
Soundtrack for sure.
All right. What is it?
It is some sort of music that I can't tell you the lyrics to because I only listen to music for the sound.
Okay.
So it's usually pretty mellow, kind of lo-fi stuff, but I always have sounds in my ears when I'm designing, but it's like a very passive way of listening.
Okay. Well, what's your go-to activity when you need a break from designing?
Probably playing with my kids. They're dragging me out in the backyard and we're kicking soccer balls and throwing footballs and that, or just going for a walk. I mean, getting outside, which I don't do enough, but it's so refreshing. Like we all need to just get outside more. Being outside is definitely the best thing.
That's good. What is your favorite Ugmonk design?
My favorite Ugmonk design, I'm going to say the analog system, because it kind of encapsulates everything that Ugmonk has been in the past and kind of where we're moving in the future in a tangible product.
Okay. Well done, by the way. Well done. Coming up with that answer. If you could collaborate with any artist, it could be living or historical, who would it be?
I would love to have Johnny Ive sit down and give his input and collaborate on some industrial design.
That would be a lot of designers' preferred one. That's super cool. What's your morning routine in 3 words?
3 words?
Just 3.
Oh, man. I was going to say get out of bed, but that's more... How about get out of bed? There. That's
good.
About it.
You're like, that's what takes a lot of the work. Well, if you could set up, an Ugmonk pop-up shop anywhere in the world, where would it be?
Probably Copenhagen.
Oh, yeah.
My wife and I were just there and just love the vibe over there. Very design forward, very cool city, smaller town, smaller, walkable city. Super inspiring.
Man, I remember I had to drive from Kolding to Copenhagen, and that bridge, have you driven on that bridge?
No, actually I haven't.
It's terrifying to have a bridge that's that long. It's like you cannot see the end and you're just on it for forever. That was actually pretty terrifying. Who is an entrepreneur that you think we should have on the podcast?
Oh, man. I think you should have Johnny Earl from Johnny Cupcakes. I don't know if you followed his whole story, but he was one of my original inspirations. I think we might have talked about this in episode 1. Very, very interesting story, inspirational guy, completely beats to his own drum and has done things differently, which has been a big inspiration for me to be like, I don't have to do things the same way that everybody else is doing it. But he's built a global brand by selling t-shirts with cupcakes on them.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, Jeff, it's always great to have conversation with you. I think, I come away with just like, I want to go do something unique, every time. You definitely are an inspiring person. And it's amazing how much of a community that you have and how you try to help people along the way, and how selfless you show up, and just how much work that you guys put in. So I really appreciate you coming in and for sharing your story with us.
Yeah, thanks. I'm an open book. So if people want to reach out to me, DM me on Instagram, Twitter, whatever.
It's good. Thanks, Jeff.